It's the Blow Red podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along. Guardiola delivers Jurgen Klopp's pep talk with the Reds stumbling before the finish line. With 3 to go in the Premier League, we'll consider if Liverpool have left it too late. Preview the visit to Villa Park. And oh yes, there might just be a wound-up manager in Manchester for us to discuss as well. To get into all of that, we have our Liverpool correspondent, both home and away, to Paul Gorst, the Squires, as well as the Wirral Wonder, Rich Garnett. Gents, I trust you're all well. And Gorsty, I'll throw over to you first. And I mean, the draw with Tottenham, it's felt off the back of that on Saturday night. The balloon kind of popped now for Liverpool's Premier League title hopes.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say they're all over. Certainly not looking as promising as they had done. I think, particularly after City got respond so well at home to Newcastle on Sunday, 5-0. But look, Liverpool were chasing or are chasing the quadruple, and there's a reason it's never been done. Liverpool have actually gone the furthest, to come the closest ever to doing it in terms of the timeline of a season. I think the most recent was Chelsea in 2006 or 7. I can never remember which one it was, but that was May the 1st. So Liverpool have gone past that. They're going to go up until probably May the 22nd, I think, when the season finishes. And then, as it's looking likelier now that City are going to be crowned champions, but still so much to play for. It's been an incredible season, really. I look at the home and away victories against United and Everton, couple of classics against City, home and away. It should be a tremendous season. Carabao Cup's already in the cabinet, and the FA Cup on Saturday, and then of course it's going to be bookended with another European Cup final. So whatever happens in the Premier League title race, it's been a fantastic season, and it was always going to be improbable, just because, as I say, there's a reason it's never been done. But City were 11, 12, 13 points clear at one stage or another, weren't they, as recently as January. So Liverpool were always up against it. They did so well to kind of haul it back, really, and to actually go level on points with City on Saturday night. But City's shown that there was no hangover from the Madrid meltdown and got the job done themselves Sunday. So it's looking like it might just be out of reach, but still 9 points to play for. So we'll see what happens. I think City have still got their tough games to come up with West Ham and Wolves on the horizon. So, yeah, we'll see. But it is looking like it's City's to lose now, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you say there. Theo, you're the F1 fan amongst us, and I suppose the analogy then, is it the tyre's been blown out, or is it just a slow puncture that Liverpool are dealing with now for the final 3 games? Because I suppose there is that glimmer of hope, isn't there? Wolves and West Ham to come for Man City. They aren't going to be the easiest of games, albeit it does seem as though they need to drop points in 2 of the remaining 3 games, given the goal difference swing as well.
I suppose it's the same situation as it's been for half a season. You never expect City to lose games. I think even the most optimistic Liverpool fan would have expected them to stay ahead to win the title, and it was just slowly eating away at that points difference. And the fact that they made it a title race again was an achievement. But even if they'd beaten Tottenham, you'd still have expected City to win these last few games and to win the title by a point. It's a little bit disappointing because it means going to the last day and you're expecting, assuming City do win these games coming up to, that they have to lose and there has to be a considerable goal swing. Whereas before, when it was just that 1 point difference, it could go to the last day and it could easily go either way, or it might just be out of reach now. But then you can't write these things off because West Ham and Wolves, they've got to win games if they want to qualify for Europe. West Ham want to get into the Europa League again. And City against Newcastle, yeah, it was a very emphatic response. It was the bad response from them, and that's what makes it a bit harder to swallow because it was a 5-goaler rather than just Liverpool's 1-0 from the week before. But Newcastle, now their season is effectively over. It's that part-time season when there are strange results against strange sides. You get teams that are in form, but then with a month to go, they can just down tools because it's all done for them. Whereas these teams at the bottom have been struggling all year. Or in the chase for Europe, that's when they can really turn it on. If we'd said at the start of the season, especially when you consider last year when Liverpool stumbled to that 3rd place finish, that you're going to be in the title race on the last day, you're going to be in 3 finals. You're going to have won at least 1 trophy, potentially 2 going into that last day. You're a bit in the hands off for that. It's quite nice consolation, isn't it? I feel Spurs have ruined the title race, having made it a title race in the first place, but Liverpool could still end up with a treble. You take that at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's the case, isn't it, Rich? Is kind of this season and the way it's looked back on will kind of be in part due to, I suppose, which trophies are landed. And I suppose it's going to need to be one of the 2 big ones, the Premier League or the Champions League, for it really to have gone down as a truly classic season, albeit, as Gorsty said before, there's been great moments already along the way, but it needs that crowning glory, doesn't it?
I think it does, and it would be deserved, which is the most important thing. But it just shows you how unpredictable or how things can change so quickly. I mean, it was only last week I was watching Manchester City somehow capitulate in a minute to Real Madrid, and all of a sudden you think, oh my word, City are out of Europe. They could end up winning nothing. And this is all conquering multi-billion-pound Manchester City, who are looking, to get a 4th title in 5 years. And the very idea of Manchester City ending up potless at the end of this season just seemed a little bit fanciful. But that was I was starting to feel last week, and then you swing it to this weekend, and all of a sudden Liverpool's optimism, and certainly my own, around nicking that league title is taking quite a bit of a blow, and you start to look at things on the other foot. And could Jurgen Klopp only end up with a Carabao Cup at the end of what we're calling the most incredible season Liverpool have had, or one of the greatest sides they've ever had? But they could end up with what Leicester City won when they beat Tranmere Rovers at Wembley all those years ago. You know what I mean? It's incredible. But I think. If it was a betting man, if it was a put my money where my mouth is now, I think Liverpool will take one of these big trophies, and of course the odds are stacked more in favour of the Champions League now. So it might be 1 apiece with City taking the title.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see how it does indeed play out. The 2000 League Cup final there at the forefront of Rich's mind 22 years ago now. But Gorsty, let's speak about a couple of the key people involved then. And I suppose we'll go first with Jurgen Klopp and the comments he made after the game on Saturday. We'll talk a bit about the game itself, and sort of labelled Spurs as world class, and said he doesn't understand how they can kind of been coached to play that way. It's not his style. It's not his way. He thinks they should come out and play more. I mean, he's spoken to the media today, of course, and it feels as though kind of at the time it's kind of sour grapes from him. I mean, we all expected that from Tottenham, didn't we? They'd gone to the Etihad, and as Theo said, they made it a title race again by a very similar display against Man City.
Yeah, they've got absolutely no apologies to make in terms of how they approach the game. It's what works for them in big games, isn't it? I thought Christian Romero was superb. I thought the 3 centre-backs and the wing-backs, not really wing-backs really, they were very much pinned back for most of the game, but Sessegnon did get forward for the goal. I think when you've got such a well-drilled kind of back 5 like that, and then the ability of Kulusevski, and then in particular Son and Kane on the counter-attack, it's quite a potent mixture. And I think sometimes what winds Klopp up is him looking at the quality of the players, in particular Son and Kane. Both of them world class, aren't they? And it probably frustrates him that teams aren't taking his team on in the manner that he would if he had those types of players. But that's by the by. Conte's there to get a result away from home. The most difficult place to go in the Premier League, Anfield, isn't it? Liverpool haven't lost in front of the home fans in the Premier League game for 5 years. Maybe we'll just conveniently ignore the behind closed season era when they somehow lost 6. But that was 101 reasons for why that happened. But Conte shouldn't have to justify the way he played. He came to get a result and he got one. So it was kind of a little bit. Klopp kind of clarified it today in his press conference before the Villa game, saying sometimes you say things that you wouldn't normally say, but the camera's shoved in your face 10 minutes after you haven't won the game that's probably just taken the title away from you, and sometimes you say things and he kind of suggested that's what Guardiola did yesterday. I'm sure we'll come on to those comments shortly. But yeah, Tottenham got absolutely don't need to justify the way they played. I think the way they play in those big games absolutely shoots them down to the ground. And with Kane and Son up front, what a combination they've got.
How different, Theo, is it to certainly, I suppose, the first half of Jurgen Klopp's reign so far, actually, with what Tottenham are doing under Antonio Conte of effectively, yes, it's kind of deeper defending counter-attacking, of really absorbing pressure and then running into the spaces. But Liverpool under Klopp, certainly in the early days, was all about counter-pressing and winning. It still is much to the same point now. Is let the opposition have the ball, they'll make a mistake, and then we'll run in behind and we'll counter them. Is that not similar to what Tottenham are doing, albeit in a slightly deeper defensive set?
A little bit, but not massively, because you think Liverpool were never that defensive, and it cost them early on in Klopp's reign. They would make silly defensive mistakes, they'd get caught out, and they had to change the tactics to the extent that rather than having both fullbacks bombing forward for a while, they'd have, like, say, Joe Gomez tucking in, or the left back tucking in, so that it was a back three to offer them that little bit of solidity, but it was still everyone bombing forward, not sitting on the edge of your own box. But you play to your strengths, and Antonio Conte is this very successful Italian manager brought up on this successful Italian system of wing-backs. He's been, Juventus, Inter Milan, Italy national team, when they love these back fives and they make it work. And when you've got a player like Son, he can just run half the length of the pitch with the ball at his feet and beat everyone. And it works brilliantly on the counter-attack. You can be critical a bit about them being so deep, so defensive, but they've gone to Anfield. They're going to play Liverpool, who've got one of the best home records around. They know they're in a hunt for a top four. For them, it was a case of don't lose rather than go out and try and get a shock result. And if they could get one on the counter, that would be their best chance of sneaking a victory. You can't really criticise their tactics. It's not Liverpool's way of doing things, and Klopp made that very clear. The fact that Spurs can go and get these tight defensive performances, go and put in clean sheets, and that this was more than we saw from Liverpool early on in their reign. They'd make a few more mistakes. They were never solid defensively until they brought in a Van Dijk, Fabinho, Alisson, and they had that spine there. Spurs is rather different, even if there are a bit of similarities in how they attack it.
Rich, I suppose also, is it worth kind of remembering there are another sort of team on the pitch, and their fans and everyone who covers Tottenham will be looking at it purely from their point of view. And actually, is it a game in which both sides, their game plan did work, but equally not enough to win the game? I mean, Spurs are probably thinking about that header for Højbjerg at the end of the game. Liverpool thinking, actually, maybe there are a few more opportunities where passes could have come off. Thiago's for Trent immediately kind of springs to mind. But in the end, it was two good sides playing at kind of the peak of their powers, cancelling one another out.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Obviously, Tottenham have got a lot to play for. It's not like they're turning up at Anfield, lying down to take a pasting. They're trying to get back into the Champions League. There's a lot at stake, and that's probably going to go to the last day as well. So, and we've already seen them win against City, so they're going to be no mugs. And like Gorsty said, you can have no complaints with the way that Tottenham set up to try and nullify Liverpool. It's worked a treat, hasn't it? Everton tried to nullify it in their own way the other week, and it almost paid off, but not quite. And this time Tottenham have managed to do a number, and they've got their noses in front. And at the end of the day, Liverpool have only equalised with a deflected shot from Luis Diaz. They needed some sort of luck to go the way. Could be crucial. Could be a crucial point come the end of the season. We just don't know how things will go. But it was obviously, you didn't want to draw that game, but you most certainly didn't want to lose it. So the result in isolation is on the balance of what happened in the game is an okay point. The problem is that Liverpool just can't afford to be dropping anything at this stage, and Jurgen Klopp knows that. Pep Guardiola knows that. They've had to make up 14 points just to get into this position. And when you do that and you think, wow, what a great run, and you've been perfect to achieve that, but you've got to continue being perfect. And it's just so hard, isn't it? It's so hard to be winning 2 games a week, competing on multiple fronts, and you're going to come up against decent sides. And that's exactly what's happened. And unfortunately, they haven't been able to get that one over the line. So as frustrating as it is, the actual on the balance of the game, and I think given sort of lack of real chances, you can't really argue with the result.
No, I suppose looking at it, Gorsty, in kind of maybe that defeat to Leicester around Christmas just gave Liverpool a bit too much. I was going to say to you, actually, is it? I know what you said about Liverpool being unbeaten with the fans obviously being at Anfield for so long, but there have been a number of draws through the course of the season at home. Chelsea, Man City, now Tottenham, drop points against Brighton as well at home, of course. But I suppose defeats to West Ham, and certainly that one against Leicester, which kind of felt as though that had created the gap that maybe got to an insurmountable position. Perhaps in the end, Liverpool just having too much to do, and doesn't matter how great the squad is and everything, they're up against a juggernaut in Man City.
Yeah, Clarke was saying, wasn't he, that the mood amongst his players was quite low, and you can understand it really, because they've only lost 2 all season. The most recent defeat wasn't even in this calendar year, and we're in May now. I think, what is it, you've collected 41 points from 45, I think. So many big wins in that run, and then 1 draw, and it's snatched away from them, or it feels like it's been snatched away from them. It must be so demoralising to know that these are the kind of near perfect standards you've got to reach now to have any chance. Because if City went around, Liverpool would have won the league, for the last 4 or 5 years, wouldn't he? But those are the standards that these two teams have set, and it's why they kind of continue to push each other on. So, Liverpool, I mean, I think the players would do well to remember how they felt after that draw, if it was quite as bad as what Klopp was saying, because they won't want to feel like that now in the FA Cup final. They certainly won't want to feel like that in Paris in the Champions League final. So they've still got a lot to go for, and they can still add to this legacy of what is, one of the greatest Liverpool teams of all time. I certainly think they'll enter that conversation a lot more forcefully if they add the European Cup to it as well. So, still loads to go. It just feels weird that Liverpool don't win a game now, and the collective mood from social media to us, our tone, to what Klopp's having to say is just so downbeat. And they've only drawn. It's just incredible, the standards that they've set now. And they're not going to be... next season, if they don't win it this season, they're going to be starting afresh next season, going for it. Hell for leather once more, won't they? But I think to your initial point, maybe they did just give themselves a little bit too much to do. There are 2 results for me that stand out in particular. You can lose to Leicester. That can happen. It was at the end of December after such a tough run. But the draw at Brentford in September and the draw at Anfield with Brighton in October, when they were 2-0 up after about half an hour against Brighton and didn't win the game. I think those 2 points, should have been 6, and that could ultimately be the difference. But if Liverpool don't win the league, it's not a kind of shock or a disaster or a nightmare. It's just part and parcel of competing against one of the greatest sides English football's ever seen.
Yeah, I completely agree on that, because if they win the Champions League and FA Cup, I suppose history will paint them as this great cup team who swept all before them in cup competitions, yet could still be a league side that collects over 90 points and misses out on the league title again. But Theo, I think it was a point you made even after the Chelsea game, wasn't it, back in August, of drawing these kind of games, and equally reinforced against City, that actually, as great as the home form's been, being unbeaten, there are 4 games in there now where 8 points have been dropped.
Yeah, it's the big games that are being costly this year when you look at it. Was it City did the double over Chelsea, Liverpool dropped points against them in both. They had 45 minutes against 10 men at Anfield. They were 2-0 up at Stamford Bridge. But then I think there's too many games we're pointing at here as, if that had gone slightly differently, Liverpool would be champions here. Like if Mohamed Salah had scored his penalty against Leicester, if they hadn't thrown away a 2-0 lead against Brighton, if they hadn't thrown away leads against Brentford, if they just turned up against West Ham, it's too many games, isn't it? Like, these are too many moments. This is why City are 3 points clear at the top of the table. They haven't had as many of those defining moments. It just feels a bit more frustrating for Liverpool because so many of them came in that first half of the season. You think, well, Luis Diaz for a whole season, maybe Liverpool have that little bit more to get the league title. or if Mohamed Salah can keep up his autumn form, Diogo Jota can keep up his autumn form, and they're having those performances over a whole campaign, Liverpool have got enough. But they're competing on four fronts here. As Gorsty said, this is just part and parcel of the way you challenge for football. Teams don't win every single week, and because there's an expectation now where you need that near perfection to win the league title, it means it's almost a disappointment. But we've been brought up following these great sides of United, Arsenal, Chelsea, when they were winning league titles. And you think, if you get over 80 points, you get around 85 points, that's a really good season. No one else is really getting near you. Liverpool and City just get 90 points, and that feels like they've almost not done enough. You need to be getting mid-90s, and that's been the case again this year. As Gorsty just said there, it's just two great teams. Liverpool might be coming out on top in the Cups. They gave themselves too much to do in the league. That's why it's just an achievement to have got it back from 13, 14 points to level to 3. They've got this consolation now with the Champions League. It's that throwback to 18-19. They missed out on the league by a point, managed to bounce back by winning the Champions League. Hopefully they can do that again. And you can also throw the Cup of Nations in there as well, where you took out Salah and Mane's international fatigue. Never mind the fact that Salah lost that and failed to qualify for the World Cup. Next year, you've got a World Cup in the middle of it, but everyone's going to have that, and you're not going to miss games with these players. So maybe that'll work into Liverpool's favour, that they'll have now a full season where we've won these cup trophies, but we've had the disappointment in the league. Got Diaz for a full year. We know we're not losing players mid-tournament for games because everyone's got this tournament, and we're all having a little break at Christmas time. It could play into their hands as another reason to push on again and go for the league next season, as it did for them when they actually won it in 1920.
Yeah, okay. Before we talk about Guardiola, Rich, just going to ask you about Mohamed Salah, and Theo mentioned him there. Since the Cup of Nations, he maybe hasn't quite come back at those heights, and perhaps just too much is expected of him all the time. But given there is the FA Cup final at the end of this week, given Champions League finals coming up as well, do you think he looks like he needs taking out the firing line at all? Or as I say there, is it just too much is expected of him, and actually the level of performance he's putting in, even at the moment, despite not always scoring, is still absolutely satisfactory and acceptable?
Just before I come on to that, I'm just having a look there at the time before last that Liverpool won the Premier League, so 30 years ago. How many points do you think they had?
82.
Any others? Any other offers?
Was that 40? How many games in the season was it? 42 games?
38. 38.
I'm going to say 81.
Theo?
It's going to be around, let's say 78. I'll go lower. It'll be a bit different. 79 is the answer. 79 points. Aston Villa second. I think Aston Villa drew. I think they drew in the last game of the season. Liverpool won against QPR. They lost 5 games in the course of the season. Aston Villa came second and lost 10. And no other side had less, apart from Liverpool, had less than double figures for defeats, apart from Wimbledon in 8th, who had 16 draws. So that just shows you the chasm in how things used to be in an all-conquering Liverpool side and to how it is now and what the standards are. It's as you said, it is near perfection, isn't it? And to the point where a draw against the good Tottenham side is treated like a defeat, really. So, yeah. Anyway, that wasn't your question.
No, I asked about Mohamed Salah, but it is interesting given we kind of get it fed to us all the time about the ultra competitive nature of the Premier League when sides. What was it this season? Liverpool was it 11, 12 game winning run that Liverpool went on prior to the draw at Man City?
Oh God! Now you're asking.
After Chelsea,
I can't remember that.
Played like 20 games since then, guy. Give him a chance.
Yeah, no, I'm just.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a 10 or 11 game winning run. But yeah, no, as we say there, it's just something that back in the day wouldn't have happened. But yeah, Rich, Mohamed Salah, does he need taking out the firing line?
I think it's just too risky, to be honest with you. He's Football Writers' Footballer of the Year for a reason. And even when he's not contributing with goals, he is contributing in other ways. He has been a little bit off his incredibly high standards that we've already touched on in other ways in terms of what you've got to do to achieve near perfection to win this Premier League, and he perhaps isn't hitting quite those heights, but it is. I think his overall team contribution still justifies him and being in that starting lineup. It'd be very risky to take him out, and I do think, however, that some of that responsibility, some of that load has probably been taken off him a bit by the emergence of Luis Diaz on the other side. I think it's a little bit of a shame that they didn't get him on the ball just a little bit more against Tottenham, and really, he's so exciting and fast and dangerous. And whereas Salah at the moment doesn't look like he really wants to take a player on. He's contributing in other ways. Diaz, on the other hand, I think is chomping at the bit to get past players and stretch aside that way and get in behind. And I think we should definitely be looking to utilise him more, but not at the expense of Mohamed Salah. I would still keep him in the side.
Okay, fair enough. Right, Pep Guardiola, let's talk about him. Gorsty saying everybody in the media supports Liverpool, wants Liverpool to win the title. I mean, it's kind of the comment a manager who seems to be cracking makes, but for Pep Guardiola, it seems to have the opposite effect, a galvanising one. It's the kind that we in the media would love to jump on and say, that was the moment he cracked. Rafa Benitez having his facts press conference and rant, Kevin Keegan loving it. And I mean, it's one of those where he said it a couple of years ago, didn't he? The 18-19 season, he reiterated this kind of comment and narrative. And actually, it just seems to galvanise and put his side into a siege mentality.
Yeah, I actually just think it's pretty offensive just to say, he supports Liverpool, so he's not going to give us any fair coverage. Like, these are professional journalists, so we're professional journalists, and it just boils everything down to who supports what team growing up. And I made the point in a comment piece today, it'd be like accusing him of not being bothered about winning the Champions League with City because he's a Barcelona fan. It's not quite how it works. We were all football fans. We all grew up watching it, supporting it, various teams and whatever else. But when we're doing our job, I at no point have I ever thought, say, for example, a report on a national newspaper is given favourable or unfavourable coverage to certain teams because of who they once supported. I think once you become a journalist covering a team, I think your fan card is left at the door, to be honest. So I think that was a bit of an offensive comment, and it was just like the worst kind of tribal Twitter comments you can imagine, wasn't it? It's like something you'd see from Guardiola era or something. One of these Twitter fan accounts who seem to just completely pollute social media. It was a bit pathetic, really, and it didn't really need to be said after he'd just come off a 5-0 win. And then he doubled down on it, didn't he? He accused James Ducker of the Telegraph of being a Liverpool fan. And anyone who's ever followed that particular reporter closely knows that his coverage is Manchester focused, both City and United. So it was a bit of a nonsense comment. And if someone who wasn't as high profile as Guardiola had made it, you'd dismiss it and you wouldn't even give it the time of day. So it was peculiar that his kind of attempt at doing a Jose Mourinho style siege mentality, thing, just didn't really work for me, to be honest. And I thought it was quite offensive to my learned colleagues.
He seems to have kind of rewritten in many ways, Theo, how English football goes about things. When Pep Guardiola came to England, it was that it's going to be too physical. His sides aren't going to be able to cope. They want to keep the ball on the ground a bit too much and everything. But do you think it comes from a position from him in many ways that he has, in many ways, rewritten that? Jurgen Klopp has even adapted and certainly built the Liverpool side to be more possession-focused rather than the heavy metal football we first saw. And yet he plays football. We were talking before about Conte and how defensive they are. His sides play football, in inverted commas, in the right way. Yet there isn't that adulation for Manchester City, perhaps, that he feels there ought to be. I don't know. And that he then feels a way in which to deflect. He has to go on the offensive against another side as to rationale and realise why his side aren't getting the credit they deserve. Because as Gorsty said, I don't think any of us would disagree. The Man City side he has built is one of, if not the best that English football has seen, albeit he seems to feel the need to go on the offensive.
It's one of the best, but when you come to Guardiola, at Barcelona, he had the best team in Spain. He had Lionel Messi, the best player in the world. At Bayern Munich, he had the best team in Germany. With all these millions to spend, they could just sign whoever they wanted from their German rivals to make them weaker and make Bayern stronger. And at City, he's got City's billions. He can sign whoever he wants. Like, they're on the verge of winning the Premier League title. They spent 100 million on a playmaker who doesn't start from every week, and they didn't really need...
I'm going to disagree a bit with you, though, because before he'd arrived, they'd never won back-to-back league titles, have they? They're on the verge now of winning 4 in 5.
I'm not saying he's a bad manager or anything. I'm just saying this is why there isn't that, I suppose, adulation for this City side as the same way for Liverpool. Because City, they've got that money. It's almost easier for them. It's not been built the same way. Like, they've already won league titles. They've built great teams and spent all these record fees. He just made it a bit more consistent because he had that winning mentality. It's different to when you completely change a team. Like, when you think back to the very start of the Premier League, when Sir Alex Ferguson suddenly turns United into a side that can win the title, and then he brings the kids through. You have the class of 92. That was a side that, until they started winning it every single year and people got sick of it, you could get behind because it was young players winning football games. Arsenal played great football, and like when they went on the Invincibles year, and you think of players like foreign players like Henry, Pires, Lundberg, Bergkamp, those are teams you liked. Chelsea, Mourinho in the early days, it was someone new. You got behind them. It's almost the underdog. It's someone fresh. Whereas City, it's just been not 10 years of dominance, but for the majority of it, it's been easy for them to win league titles, and they've got the money to the extent that they can be pushed hard by Liverpool, and then they can go and spend 70, 80, 90, 100 million or whatever on Erling Haaland, just throwing an extra 30 goals next season to make it that much harder. It doesn't matter the ability of the manager here, because he can just go and put that star player right bang into the team to boost his chances. Whereas Jurgen Klopp, while they have spent money, he's still lost key players along the way, like Philippe Coutinho. He's turned players like Jordan Henderson, James Milner. He's kept them going through his whole reign. He's done it a different way, and that's maybe why you have that greater respect for them. It'd be similar, say, if Newcastle came up now with all their billions, and in 10 years' time, we're talking about them challenging for Premier League titles, and it's between them and City. For a little bit, it'd be like someone new, but it'll get boring. It's not the same way as a manager completely reinventing a side in a new image. It's just, they've had this success given them to overnight because of the tools they've got at their disposal. And then there's always the thing with Manchester City. It doesn't matter how many titles they win. They are not going to topple Manchester United as the main team in Manchester for like the history, the pedigree. It will take them a number of decades to even be in a position where they can do that, where they have to win European Cup after European Cup after European Cup and have a whole new generation of fans. And wait for these old generations that remembers them as this second division side to completely change that narrative. So maybe that's where Pep's comments come on about, more people support Liverpool, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, they're just a secondary side in their own city. You can't really go along from that way when they have just emerged from nowhere because they were given billions overnight and can sign whoever they want.
It's part of it as well, Rich. Theo mentioned the word there, narrative. We're journalists. We like nice stories. We like jeopardy, this, that, and the other. But the style of play in which he is brought into Manchester City is so dominant. He's so suffocating for opponents that even yesterday, as soon as Raheem Sterling puts Man City 1-0 up against Newcastle, you're effectively sat there going, this could be 5-0. I'll wait. By the end, it is 5-0. And it doesn't feel as though, I suppose, that even that Man City of old, of kind of when they won that first league title, of Aguero scores right at the death, the fact they'd kind of been down in the doldrums where they had been previously, that it is kind of a new club that's been incarnated since Guardiola's kind of been there and really made them so dominant that actually even the style of play, for albeit nice passing triangles, gets a bit boring because quite often the opposition just can't compete.
Yeah, I think it is a bit boring, to be honest. And of course, the response to that to be, well, we've got more points than anyone else, so tough. And that's fair enough, isn't it? You know what I mean? He's built a very successful side. I've said this a few times on the pod that I just feel like they score the same goal over and over again. You know, they get in between the fullback and the defender, pull it back, and one of the many talented footballers is there to finish it off. That's the goal I see routinely in my head over and over again when I think of Manchester City. just imagine for a moment that Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool didn't exist. What sort of Premier League would we have? You'd have a PSG situation or a Bayern Munich situation where a team seems to win the league by a counter. It's all about who's finishing second and third. There's no real competition at the top. But for Liverpool, that's the situation there. You might have a situation of Manchester City winning five league titles on the run, turning into Celtic or on a grander scale. So I'd imagine, where it's critical of the national media, that the national media are probably quite grateful for having Liverpool there, so that a decent narrative can be created around the Premier League season. There's been a lot talking about this, how this could be the most dramatic end to a Premier League season in years, and that could still be the case. So obviously we need a few snookers to make that happen now, but that's why the national media like Liverpool. And let's be honest, we haven't always said that, have we? That's very much not been the case. Look down the years, and even back to their own dominance around the 80s and the 90s. It's all a case of who can knock them off the perch. So I think Guardiola, maybe he doesn't feel quite validated for his achievements, and there's probably some substance in that. But Jurgen Klopp's more charismatic than him. I personally think Jurgen Klopp's side is more entertaining to watch, and then you've got the sort of the whole romance of Liverpool's history and its passionate supporters, which as hard as they might try and as much money as you throw at it, you just can't replicate that type of thing. You know what I mean? Money can't buy your love was written on the back of the Echo the day after Luis Garcia sent the Reds to Istanbul, and it was pure, and that was obviously a bit of a dig at Chelsea's billions and how that still couldn't buy what for me was probably the greatest night at Anfield, certainly in my living memory. And they are things that Guardiola and City don't have, and you can't just buy them. So he might not get the love that he wants from the media, but it's a bit tough.
Do you want to come in there, Gorsty?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Rich said there in terms of it being just that kind of ceaseless carousel of passing, and they've got a very trademark goal that they scored. And it'd be interesting to see how and if that changes next season with Erling Haaland lining up front for them. But I just think even that is just quite boring, isn't it, in itself? People saying we need the number 9. Let's just go and buy the hottest property in European football when we probably don't even need them. But it's what Liverpool are up against, so we'll see what happens. It's it's just a bit. I don't know really. I don't get why Guardiola feels he has to kind of pour fire on this. It's almost like a mentality that exists within Manchester City's fan base, within the kind of maybe the deep, dark recesses of the online forums where they feel that everyone's out to get them, and they're really not at all. It's just a case of they've spent the most money since coming in 2008, and a lot of people, as Theo says, will remember them as a kind of Division 1 scrabbler who won the lottery. So it's nothing to do with kind of, don't know really. I can't really articulate it that well, which isn't great to say, but it's just strange that Guardiola seems to be obsessed and this paranoia of the whole world's against us. Because when you've got to go to the court of arbitration for sport to overturn a 2-year ban from the Champions League, there's probably something going on there that's not quite right, isn't it? And for whatever reason, the legal wranglings of the finest minds that City have been able to employ, because money is no object to them outside of getting around financial fair play, they were able to do that. So I think Guardiola should probably just coach the players that he's in charge of and try and make the best team that he can. And to be fair to him, he is very much doing that. But I just feel it leaves a bit of a sour taste when he starts trying to make it, City against the world, because it really isn't. It's just the way it is.
It's also a rivalry before you jump in, Theo. It's a rivalry, isn't it? You can jump in after this that's kind of been built off the technical ability of both sides. Yet it's when he comes out with comments like this, of course, that Liverpool fans do then jump on it, and that then creates a rivalry, which then, when it's then put back to Pep Guardiola, he doesn't seem to enjoy. He just adds kind of fuel to the flames, as it were. But Theo, you can jump in.
I was going to say it also feeds off the awards, doesn't it? Because he had a little dig, didn't he, a couple of weeks ago when Salah was announced as the Football Writers Award winner. So that's one reason why he's going to have a go at the journalists, because they've given it to Salah for a couple of times. Henderson won the FWA, didn't he? And then you think, well, PFA, Van Dijk's won it. He always has this little moan if his players aren't winning the awards at the end of the season. But then who in that Man City side has really stood out this year to win those awards? Like Kevin De Bruyne is the best player, and I wouldn't say it's been his best season for them. He's been great, but not to those next standards. It just coincides with Salah's decline a little bit since the new year. If Salah had done that a whole season long, it'd be even stranger if he was coming out and having these goes at it now. But Guardiola always likes to moan at random times. It's what managers do. They have to create this them and us, and there is this rivalry there, but it still doesn't feel like a fierce, bitter rivalry. The fact that if it was Manchester United, Liverpool were having this rivalry with Chelsea when they were going for all these titles over 4 or 5 years, there'd be real hatred there. But it's weird to call them a mild irritants because they're so much better than that. But there isn't that spikiness to it, and there's the respect between the managers. There isn't that history, the pedigree, even the players. There isn't anyone there that you absolutely hate. Like you just respect some of the talent they've got. I think Vincent Kompany was a superb player. Aguero was a superb player. David Silva, Bernardo Silva, you can have a little snipe at him, but it's not the same as just the ongoing wars you'd have with like Gary Neville for a decade, to the extent that even now, long after he's retired, whenever he says something about Liverpool, it's up on our website. Everyone's reading it, and you're waiting to throw it back in his face when he says something daft. City just don't have that spikeness in the rivalry, and Guardiola make comments to try and inspire his players, to motivate them, but then there isn't a rivalry there to really back it up at the end of the day. It's just two great sides who are really good at what they do, competing for these honours. And it'd be a bit more interesting if it was City win it 1 year, Liverpool win it the next year, City win it 1 year, Liverpool the next, just because we're all a bit contrary. We want someone new winning the title. We don't want it being the same outcome every single year. It's just a bit boring. It's going to be boring when they sign Haaland, because you got feeling at the time is, he'll score 30 goals and they'll win the Premier League quite easily. You're waiting, turning to Liverpool, going, hopefully they can do what they've done again this year and make it a title race. Because as Rich said earlier, if Liverpool aren't there, it'd be so boring. They just make it a bit interesting. That's why they've got those supporters from outside.
He could have the Lukaku effect, couldn't he? I think that's maybe what everyone's maybe just hoping that's it. Anyway, we've run out of time to talk about Steven Gerrard and the job he's doing at Aston Villa. We will have a Behind Enemy Lines podcast with you on the Blood Red channel, though, featuring Ashley Priest from the Birmingham Mail. So let's jump ahead and get into picking our team for the visit to Villa Park. Alisson between the sticks, and Rich, I'll let you lead off. Who's going to be the back four?
It's going to have a bit of a familiar feel to it. Surprise, surprise. But I think I'm looking at Trent at right back and Robert at left back, and then Matip and Van Dijk in the middle. And I don't know if that will be the same in the cup final, but that's what I'd go with tomorrow. Okay, what about yourself, Gorsty?
I can see Matip coming back in, and to be honest, I can see Tsimikas starting. There's 1 or 2 whispers today. Robertson's being carefully managed, but it's kind of gone under the radar a little bit because Liverpool have been winning games. But it was quite evident, wasn't it, that he'd be brought off on Saturday, and it was a bit like, I can see why he hasn't been too good tonight, and you could understand that substitution. So maybe just give him a little bit of a breather before Wembley. So Tsimikas for me, Matip, Van Dijk and Trent.
Theo?
Yeah, I agree with Gorsty. I think I would like to put Joe Gomez in, but you can't change 3-year defence. Klopp said this on record before. He doesn't want to make that many changes to his back four. Tsimikas is the one who's had less game time recently. Robertson has looked a little bit tired in the last few games, so that makes sense. Konate started the last couple, so it makes sense again putting Matip in, and then it just leaves him with the centre-back dilemma for the FA Cup final. But you expect a few changes with it being the cup final with the turnaround from Spurs. So, yeah, 2 changes. Tsimikas at left back, Matip along Van Dijk, and then Trent keeps his place.
Okay, Theo, I'll ask to stick with you for your midfield.
Oh, this one's tough, isn't it? There's so many
That's
options.
why you're thinking the midfield.
That's why you're making me go first. This is where Doyley would say, come to me last. I'll probably change my mind, after we've done this pod. Henderson is the number 6. Keita's in. And yeah, let's go James Milner. Why not? It's his former club.
Okay.
Rotate the midfield, give him some energy.
Rich?
It comes down to, I think, how much priority Jurgen Klopp is still putting on this game. You know what I mean? If he still thinks he can win the league, then he has to put out the strongest side that he's got. Whereas in a normal season, this is definitely not a normal season, by the way. In an ordinary season, when you're going into an FA Cup final, you'd probably look to rest a few, wouldn't you? But I don't think he has that luxury. And for that reason, I think I would have Fabinho, Thiago, and Naby Keita as my 3. I'm not quite feeling Henderson at the moment. I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure he's right at the level. And if they're going to have any chance to win the league, obviously they've got to be Aston Villa. That goes without saying. So that's the 3 I'd go with.
I think that shows that Rich isn't giving up on the league, whereas I'm just going, I'll just win the FA Cup.
But, you know what, my son is going to the FA Cup final, so like I should be wanting Liverpool to win that above anything else, which obviously goes against the usual hierarchy of Champions League and that. But you're quite right. I'm a bit of an eternal optimist, and I've not quite given up on it just yet.
Or you're setting your son up as a true football fan to be given a bit of disappointment early on to then come fighting back.
Legacy supporter,
Yeah, exactly. Gorsty, what about your midfield?
I can make the case for Milner. I said on the pod last week, you're surprised to see James Milner starting in midfield for a team who can probably legitimately claim to be the best in the world at the moment. And there he was, giving a man of the match performance against Newcastle. So I wouldn't be shocked if he got the nod. It might even be a shot for Curtis Jones as well, I think Rich's midfield will be my cup final midfield. Henderson, Keita, Thiago and Fabinho. I think Thiago's played a lot of football, so I'm not going to go with him. I'm going to go with Fabinho, Milner and Jones.
Interesting take. Okay, stay with you, Gorsty, for your front 3.
I think Diaz will start Saturday. So I'm going to play Jota down the middle, Mane on the left, Salah on the right.
There we go. Rich?
Well, I've already said we can't take Salah out, so he'll have to be in. I can see what Gorsty's done, and I could see that happening. It's just I haven't given up on the league, which to me would be Salah, Mane, Diaz. But I could see it going the other way as well with Jota and Mane back where he was. But no, I think Diaz has got to play. So I'll stick as it was. Salah, Mane, Diaz.
Okay, Theo?
I don't think Salah would like being dropped. He's still got the golden boot to go for as well. Son scored at the weekend, so it's 2 between them. And if you're thinking when Spurs have got to play like Burnley, Norwich, Salah needs a couple of goals in the league to make sure he's got that trophy. So Salah starts on the right. I'm going to lean on the Jota side of it. Jota down the middle. Mane on the left. I think Diaz, they're still managing him a little bit. I'd like to see him start. I just don't think they will. So yeah, I'll go with that 3.
Okay, and quick whip round then on predictions. Theo, you can go first. Rich, you follow on, and Gorsty, you finish up.
Not 7-2.
I was going to say the same thing.
2-1 Liverpool. It's going to be tight. They're a little bit tired. Yeah, it's going to be a tight one.
Rich?
I'm going to keep the positive vibes going. I'm going to go with 3-0 away win.
3-0 and Gorsty?
2-0. I think Matip and Van Dijk it's just something about that back line that usually means the teams find it hard to score. So I think Liverpool will keep a clean sheet.
Fateful last words ahead of a trip to Villa Park. Anyway, let's wait and see how it does all play out. Plenty of build-up to come, as I say, the Behind Enemy Lines podcast and video on the Blood Red audio channels, as well as YouTube as well. But for myself, Guy Clarke, Theo Squires, Paul Gorst and Rich Garnett, thanks for your time and your company here on Blood Red. It's bye for now.